With the press conference with Joe Flacco, and of course taking the field on Thursday in Owings Mills. Our Luke Jones will be on the scene, as will I, tweeting, Facebooking, socialing, texting if there's any breaking news, of course, your way. But meanwhile, the hits keep coming for the Orioles and in the right direction. The Colorado Rockies came to town on Monday night, and so far, so good. Luke Jones joins us now. He was at Camden Yards on Monday night, where it was quiet night after a busy weekend. Not a lot of people there, certainly hot as Hades at game time, and the Orioles find a way to, as I've said, win games late. They have better bats than your bullpen after the seventh inning, and they showed it again on Monday night.
They did, but again, and we talked about this recapping the weekend against Cleveland, this homestand has really had a 2014 feel to it. Now, we know the Orioles have won games all year long. There's no disputing that. I mean, this team now a season best, 18 games above 500, best record in the American League, but they're winning games a little bit differently of late. They're pitching a lot better. They got another good start from Yovani Gallardo. The Orioles did not really swing the bats all that well against Jorge De La Rosa, and it was a 2-2 game. Goes into extra innings, and they end up scoring the winning run on an error by the pitcher. So just another one of those games where you find an unlikely way to win. Maybe didn't play perfectly, certainly didn't swing the bats the way they would have liked, but probably in retrospect not shocking to see them struggle, despite the fact that De La Rosa had an ERA above 6 going into this one. He's a soft tosser, and we know how the Orioles typically do against those kind of soft throwing and a left-handed pitcher on top of that. So was really good to see that. I think really encouraging to see what Yovani Gallardo has done. Even go back to the start in New York, which it didn't pitch outstanding, but he did go 7 innings.
But this has been well enough. Like, if we had seen this in April and May and in June, maybe we wouldn't be as skeptical as we are of Yovani Gallardo, I should say.
Yeah, right. Well, and he didn't pitch in May and
obviously,
most of June.
right.
So, and the big reason, I think you just look at the velocity, it's better. This guy's not someone who's going to throw 94, 95 like he did 6 years ago, but he's at least throwing in the high 80s. He's touching 90 or 91, which he wasn't even coming close to doing that in April. So you see the difference. And the thing that he talked about after Monday night's game was he said he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive early in counts. And I think one thing that everyone agrees, this isn't a guy that can live pitching over too much of the plate. I don't want to say throwing it right down the middle either, because no one can do that. But it's been very clear he's tried to pitch to the four corners of the plate really all year long. And if you're not good with your command trying to do that, you're going to end up walking.
Yeah, it's ball one, right? Exactly.
And he's had that issue, and that really hasn't been a major issue in his career. He's been a guy who's had pretty good command, but he's someone who's averaged 5 walks per 9 innings. Very Ubaldo-like in that regard, which isn't a good thing, obviously. But only walked a couple on Monday night, and the thing that he's doing, not that he's giving in completely, because you don't want to throw it right down the middle, but I think he is trying to be a little more pitch efficient and maybe getting a little more of the plate and trusting his defense a little bit more, and it's worked out. Also struck out a game high or a season high 6 on the evening too. So, and everyone talks about the Rockies lineup, hitting at Coors Field as opposed to away, and we know that that's a factor. But this is a team that scored a lot of runs, so that lineup isn't chopped liver. So nice to see him go 6 2/3 innings. There was some debate there about whether you bring in Givens to face Mark Reynolds or not. Buck elected to leave him in there, which I think certainly was open for debate. But overall, that still didn't spoil what was a really good outing for Yovani Gallardo. And it's very clear where the Orioles are with their rotation right now. They feel great about Chris Tillman. They feel good about Kevin Gausman. And after that, it's been anyone's guess.
Well, I think we feel okay about Gallardo now, kind of, sort of, right?
But it's still a very small sample. My point is, of late, and this is where things are encouraging, because we know the Orioles are going to try to get one starting pitcher. I don't know if they're going to be successful in doing that, but they're certainly not going to go out there and get 3 starting pitchers. But what's nice, since the start of the second half, we're finding some maybes at least. Maybe Yovani Gallardo figuring things out here a little bit. Dylan Bundy certainly a big maybe, more so from a standpoint of staying healthy and how far are they willing to push him from a physical standpoint. And Vance Worley, we saw pitch really well on Sunday. So at the very least, unlike some of the guys that were getting opportunities in the first half and really struggling to give the Orioles even a chance to win, they're at least getting some performances that make you say, all right, maybe there is something here. And certainly Yovani Gallardo now pitching 13 2/3 innings over his last two starts. Much improvement from what we were seeing earlier in the year.
Luke Jones at Camden Yards for all things Rockies and Orioles. Orioles take game one of the series against the Rockies with a 3-2 victory in 10 innings. Defensive miscues. I mean, this is a good time to talk about when we see these other teams that kick the ball around. Now, look, I know Arenado has a reputation of being on the other side of Machado if you talk to the people in Denver, right? People in Denver all week have said he's the best player in baseball, best third baseman in baseball. Larry Bowa was saying that to Tracy Ringoldsby. I've had that on the radio this week. And then he kicks the ball around a couple times early in the game. Certainly an elite player, but that's the one thing we don't see so much from the Orioles, which are these brain farts or defensive miscues. I know we've had some issues with them running the bases over the weekend in the heat, but when you don't kick the ball around, you don't lose the game in the 10th inning by kicking the ball around, right?
Absolutely, and when you turn double plays, it really makes things that much easier for your pitchers, and that really speaks to what I was talking about with Gallardo, him trusting his defense a little bit more. But in the case of Arenado, that's not something he does either.
Right.
I mean, he had one error all season, and I think there's a natural tendency as Orioles fans to just defend Machado blindly and say, "Oh, Manny Machado is way better than Nolan Arenado." He's terrific too, and I'm not going to try to rate the two of them. I don't watch Arenado.
Dude, we'll be doing that the next 10 years, right? I mean, literally. Right. I mean, Machado might wind up at shortstop, but in general, around baseball, these are the guys we're going to be here. I said to the Colorado guys, Luke, I'm like, hey, around here we talk about Trout and Harper. We don't talk about Arenado. You're in Denver. You're talking about Arenado. You're probably talking about Story. You might be talking about Dahl. This is an impressive young hitting group, at least. I don't know how they're ever going to get pitching there, but Arenado's special, no doubt about it.
He really is, and that's why it was so shocking to see him misplay 2 balls in 2 innings. 2 errors accounting for 67% of his error total this season. I mean, it's just incredible, and all the defensive metrics say that he's a really special third baseman as well. So pretty cool to see those two have an opportunity. I mean, as much as, and I think we've talked about this, I don't care for interleague play that much, but there are some rare instances where, clearly teams that, where you have some geographic rivals. I mean, that's obvious. White Sox, Cubs, Yankees, Mets, all those. But when you do get an opportunity to have 2 really special players who play the same position, that their teams get to match up, and you kind of are able to showcase those 2 against each other. That's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, but I mean, Brooks Robinson and Mike Schmidt never stood on, never crossed paths in the 3 years they were still in baseball together. In the old days, it just never happened. Now, at least it happens every couple of years, right? I mean, and both of these guys figure to, if the Rockies are true and if the old man who owns the team here ponies up, both of these guys figure to be guys that you're not going to let go play for the Yankees or the Dodgers, hopefully.
And let's face it, I mean, these are the it's one thing when you just talk about, free agents are going to come and go. I mean, we see that more and more and more. The instances where someone spends their entire career somewhere has become so extremely rare. But these are the types of really special talents. Those once in a generation, once every decade or two kind of talents who come along. Talking Manny Machado and Nolan Arenado and what he's done in his brief major league career in Colorado. These are the kind of guys that you hope do stay in one spot, at least for an extended period of time, at least for a first contract before hitting free agency.
Well, the first contract's the last now when they're 8 and 10-year deals, right?
Yeah. Oh, no doubt about it. Well, and these are the kind of guys, as much as we many times like to mock those long-term deals, like, for example, the deal the Angels gave Albert Pujols, which right now, 4 years into that, isn't looking very good. I think everyone would agree with that.
There's a lot of those. There's more of those that look bad than look good at that level. Level.
But when you give one to a guy who is, in the case of Manny Machado, hypothetically speaking, let's say the Orioles in the next calendar year give him a 12-year contract. It doesn't sound nearly as bad when you're talking about a guy who's only going to be 25 years old. by the time that contract would start. So it's just
they said that about Joe Mauer, by the way, too. We see how that's worked out, right?
Right. I mean, it's just
there was no thought that Joe Mauer wasn't going to the Hall of Fame when he gave him that money, right?
Right.
I mean, literally.
And in the case with him, I mean, it was concussions being an issue catching. But when you have these special generational talent kind of guys, those are the guys that I think you feel a lot better about giving a 10-year contract to. The problem is getting them to agree to that. And the big thing with what we're going to see and continue to see, because it's not going away, is we're going to continue to see the opt-outs, especially for these younger players. And hey, if teams are willing to give it to them, why wouldn't they want that to have the no downside kind of option where you can just say, yeah, I'll hit free agency again after my monster MVP caliber season.
Well, yeah, the Chris Davis thing's not working out so great right this minute. There's been some illness in his at-bats here of late, and and I know how streaky he is, but boy, when it goes bad, it goes really bad with him, right?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, he looks horrible right now. He'd be the first to tell you that. I know he's putting in the extra work for it. He's at this point with Chris Davis now. If this continues and his average drops to 195 over the next 3 weeks, right now he's at 224. So it's hit about as
you don't want it to get any lower, right?
right. You don't want it to get any lower than that. But at the same time, we've seen Chris Davis now. I mean, he's been here since late July 2011. This is who he is. He's going to go through some stretches where he looks absolutely horrendous, and I'm starting to get comments on Twitter, should they move him down in the order? Should they bench him for a couple days?
Well, they already sent him to the DH, right? I mean, Buck tried that on Monday night.
Yeah, and the reality is, I mean, first of all, this team's playing with a short bench. They hope to get Hyun-Soo Kim back, could be activated as early as tonight, as he had a rehab stint, hit a 2-run homer in Bowie on Monday night. But, in the case of Davis, you kind of ride it out. Keep in mind, the guy did deal. He seemed like he was the one who got hit with that stomach bug, that virus, the flu-like symptoms, whatever it was that just kind of went through the Orioles clubhouse last week in the Bronx. He missed 3 games, so it tells you how sick this guy was. So you wonder if that he wasn't swinging the bat particularly well before that anyway, but you just wonder if that's really thrown him out of whack. But I can't have the mentality, and I'm not saying you do either, but that I'm overly panicking about Chris Davis at this point. I think you look at his numbers overall, even with the batting average taken into account, still has an on-base percentage of .337. His OPS is still over 800. He's hit home runs. It's not as though he hasn't produced, but this is one of those stretches with him where you kind of just, you hold on tight. You know that he can turn things around. Sometimes it doesn't take much for him to turn things around. 1 or 2 home runs can sometimes set him off. And in the meantime, you like seeing other guys contribute and do big things, and they've gotten that from others, including Adam Jones, who drove in 2 runs on Monday night.
All right, man. So we'll get back to the Orioles, which I want to get back to Adam Jones. I want to get back to Chris Tillman taking the hill, and even this sort of young matchup of Bundy and Gray on Wednesday at Camden Yards. But obviously the trading deadline's here, and we've talked so much about this over the last month, who's going to get what. Look, the Orioles were never getting a Aroldis Chapman, right? So, the Cubs get him. The Yankees have at least sold off a piece that everyone predicted they would sell off because they feel like they're going to re-sign him again in the offseason, right? So, and then the Blue Jays getting involved with this Melvin Upton situation. I know the Orioles were involved in that. I cannot shed a tear that Melvin Upton's not coming to the Orioles, but I also probably could shed a tear that they haven't just ended this Jimenez thing or found a taker, and I don't know if there's going to be a second taker. It appeared as though somehow San Diego had some interest, but the trades are going to happen now. We're a week out on this thing, and this is going to be as big a part of baseball as whether the Orioles won or lost tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and for all the trades that we end up seeing around baseball, I mean, I think a lot of history shows that most of them don't make that dramatic.
They're a bigger deal in July than they are in October. Right?
It's just true. Think about it, and I think sabermetrics and trying to quantify things and wins above replacement, those types of things have probably taught us a little bit. Not to say that you don't try to improve your club, but it doesn't suddenly turn a team that's very much fringe into a great team. And on the flip side, we've seen examples of blockbuster deals, like think of Oakland getting John Lester a couple years back.
Yeah, I'm the fool that sat on the radio saying, "No, that's it, man. Oakland, they're going to win. They're going all the way now."
Said that. And then what happened? Well, they traded Yoenis Cespedes in order to do it, and it really messed with the balance of their lineup, and they collapsed, and they barely made the playoffs, and they lost in the one-game wild card to the eventual AL champion in Kansas City. So, it's always interesting to me to see how much urgency there is, how much anxiety there is among every fan base, not just the Orioles. But, it is going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I was very unmoved about the idea of Melvin Upton. Look, I think there was a way to use him that made sense. But at the same time, I had my concerns of, if you're bringing him in, I don't want that to mean Hyun-Soo Kim goes to the bench, because Melvin Upton has a .310 on-base percentage. I mean, he's a guy that has a little bit of pop, but he's not a well-rounded offensive player. This team doesn't need more home runs. They need someone to get on base for the guys who hit home runs. And Hyun-Soo Kim, who they do expect to be back here, if not tonight, certainly over the next couple days. I didn't want that to sacrifice any of his playing time. So, we'll see what happens with Jimenez. I don't know what to say. I mean, he hasn't pitched since the last Friday before the All-Star break. The Orioles have talked a little bit about what they're going to do for that Thursday start in Minnesota. They've talked about maybe wanting to give Kevin Gausman an extra day. He threw a career-high pitches. And I think they won't say this publicly, but I think they'd rather have him be one of the starters in that Toronto series over the weekend. But, they've talked about perhaps giving Jimenez an opportunity against the Twins on Thursday. That's not 100% set, but
he pitched well there one time, like 2 years ago, when he was just awful. That the first stretch when he came in, I remember him going out there and looking like Nolan Ryan in Minnesota one night.
Yeah,
and a lot of people are going to look like Nolan Ryan against Minnesota this year. They stink, man. They're horrible.
Well, and I think the mindset is, in addition to setting a rotation a little bit more against Toronto, the thought is it's a makeup game.
Yeah, let him go get a AAA start.
Right. And the thought is, if this guy can't even give them an okay outing against the worst team in the league, then what do you do? I mean, they're not using him out of the bullpen. He's been in the bullpen, for the most of the last three and a half weeks.
Well, the games in New York were so tight, you weren't going to let him blow it,
sure,
right? I mean, and I know they lost a lot last week, but they're the hottest team in baseball right now. Look, they've won 5 in a row. That no one else has gone a week without losing, and it really feels to me like they're a better team than this Colorado team. I never felt like on Monday night the game wasn't in hand, but it really does come down to, can you get me to the 6th inning? And Gallardo's been able to do that. Bundy's been able to do that, and if they give the ball to Jimenez on Thursday night, he's got to be able to do that.
Yeah, and again, that doesn't mean he's back in the rotation. It would just be, probably an assessment piece more than anything. I mean, he hasn't pitched in 3 weeks. See if some of the stuff he's done on the side, see if there's any improvement whatsoever. At least enough improvement where you feel, okay, even pitching out of the bullpen, do we feel that there's a little bit of improvement made that he might be able to come in and give you some decent work out of the pen? And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I'd expect it to happen, but it's kind of where they are. But, getting back to the trade deadline, and I wrote a little bit about this at WNST.net, I think for Orioles fans, I think most are realistic about their chances in adding an impact starter. Do I think they can add someone? Sure. Do I think it's going to be someone who's markedly better than what they have right now? I don't feel they're going to. I think
go through the history of it. Bud Norris, Scott Feldman. We just go down the list, right? None of those guys were. I mean, if they got another Scott Feldman or a Bud Norris, I felt good about those deals when they got those guys because they were in good seasons. The way Power was in a good season. So, part of this is you always sort of go for the guy who's having a good season. The question is, what's the next 60 days going to look like? Because that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and I mean, I know the names that have been out there that I mean, Andrew Kastner had been talked about a lot. I mean, that's a giant meh for me. I mean, he hasn't pitched well this year. Nothing about how he's pitched has looked all that good. Has pitched very poorly outside of Petco Park. Jeremy Hellickson's a name that's been out there a lot. He's been linked to the Marlins, and even a guy like him who, again, we're talking about a very modest rental and very debatable if he's going to pitch all that much better than what they've gotten. When you talk about a guy coming back to the American League. But those are the types of moves that the Orioles can make. They couldn't go out and get a Pomerantz. They don't have the capital to go get Chris Sale unless they're willing to deal from their major league roster, which, if you're doing that, that's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, why do you want to deal Jonathan Scope away from Chris Sale?
I mean,
literally, that's what it would be, right?
Would that improve your pitching? Yeah, but you're hurting your offense then. How much improvement are you really, really making? So, I kind of said, I think Orioles fans need to be realistic here. Even, they want to add a starting pitcher. They do. But I don't know if that's going to happen. And certainly if they do, I'm not convinced that it's going to be someone that is going to be better than Yovani Gallardo and Dylan Bundy and Vance Forley in the back end of that rotation. So that's why it is encouraging to see that they have pitched better since the start of the second half.
Luke can be reached, Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. Anything else for us here? I like watching the Rockies play because every guy in the lineup hits the ball, but I hate it because the Orioles, every pitch is in advance. They're a real major league lineup. I mean, if they ever get any pitching at all, I was kind of shocked to see how close they were to 500. I get that they kick the ball around a little bit. I get that I've never heard of any of the guys in their bullpen. But this is an interesting little series. I usually don't like these, and clearly the fans don't either, right? On a 101-degree night, there weren't a whole lot of people at the ballpark, and unless you're really a baseball nerd and you want to come see Arenado play, you're probably not going to see him play at Camden Yards for the 6 years, right?
Well, and you just said it, though. Go down that lineup. Blackman, LeMahieu, who I think is one of the best-kept secrets in the National League. He's a quality second baseman. Arenado, Carlos Gonzalez. You know about those guys. Trevor Story has been a great story this year, no pun intended. And then, of course, David Dahl makes his Major League debut on Monday night. When you have Mark Reynolds hitting seventh, and look, Mark Reynolds might not be the guy he was a few years back when he was hitting 30, 40 home runs, but that's a pretty impressive lineup. There's no doubt. Even away from Coors Field, that's still a formidable lineup, even if the numbers get skewed a little bit being in their home ballpark. But you're right. It's all about the pitching, and as much as Colorado can rake, they don't have pitching. Even though, like I said, Jorge De La Rosa, with his 6 ERA coming into Camden Yards, pitched pretty well, and he has pitched better since going back into the rotation last month. So, but overall, the pitching is the reason why the Rockies find themselves 5 games below 500, and we've seen the Orioles get better pitching in addition to their hitting, and now a season-best 18 over, and they also gained an extra game on the Red Sox, who lost to Detroit. So 2.5-game lead, 18 over 500, best in the American League. Interesting to monitor the trade deadline, but at this point, even with what the Orioles are right now, even with the questions about the starting pitching, we continue to talk about that, and they just keep winning games and have the best record in the league.
Automatic tonight. Chris Tillman going to the Hill against Bettis and Bundy and Gray, and then the Birds with a weird little trip here out to Minnesota on Thursday and then up to Toronto for the weekend. Luke's going to be out at Oriole Park at Camden Yards this evening and tomorrow evening, and then, of course, beginning with the sweat sessions out in the mornings with the whistles and the pads and the blocking dummies and a handful of fans. Ravens training camp begins on Thursday. We'll have full coverage at WNST.net. Our Facebook, our Twitter, our LinkedIn, all of those cool places, Snapchat, Instagram. You can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Download it, listen live when you want, where you want, how you want. It's the way we do things. The morning newspaper, 7 a.m., it hits your email inbox. That is powered up by Planet Fitness. That has box score standings, all the breaking news from around the sports world. It's free. It's easy. Sign up at WNST.net. Last but never least, any breaking news will happen first on the WNST Tech Service. That's powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And even on Facebook Live and WNSTV on YouTube, we never stop talking Baltimore sports.